Let's just go to someone who's even equally as stupid, but with even less of an agenda, I think, on some level, outside of just like making some short-term cash. Here's our friend Dave Rubin. He is on book tour. He's being interviewed by a guy named Pat Brittenden, who is host of Department of Conversation, a YouTube channel. In fact, I think they've asked me to come on this program. And now that I think of it, and I think it came like a month, the show looks pretty good. I think I might do it. But be that as it may, Dave Rubin is on. He is doing his book tour. And this exchange is, I've seen Rubin talk about this before, but it really just lays out how little Dave Rubin has thought about these things, how little he has read about these things, how little he understands these things. He's given some talking points. There's a reason why guys like Dave Rubin or Tim Pool or these guys who, ostensibly play this game of like, I'm actually coming from the left or did come from the left. I mean, Rubin is, left it, but I'm not going to talk about actual policy, and I'm not going to learn about policy. I think on some level it's because they don't want to. That the easy money for them is talking about like cultural things that are written in the paper that everybody can have an opinion on. And there's no data. We don't have to talk about data or anything. Like I can come up with a well-formed opinion about something that is meaningless. But if you ask me a specific question about something that goes to the heart of my political philosophy, supposedly, well, then I'm in deep, deep water. Here is Dave Rubin. Pat Britton is from New Zealand. He's in New Zealand. He's like, and I'm not sure what kind of system they have in New Zealand, if it's more NIH type of thing, or if it's not NIH, if it's more national health, NHS program where like literally the government owns the hospitals and pays, like is in the medical delivery business, or if it's more like, a Canadian system where they are in the medical health insurance business. But either way, Dave Rubin lays out what he would like to see and doesn't realize it exists in his own state.
Perspective, what's wrong with my healthcare in New Zealand? The US doesn't want healthcare like the rest of the Western world. Where have we got it wrong and you guys got it right?
So I will be completely honest with you. I don't know about your healthcare system enough, the New Zealand healthcare system specifically. But if you mean broadly, you mean socialized healthcare? Let me give you a concrete example. My mum passed away 18 months ago. She passed away from motor neuron disease. She had a bed sent over from Germany, a chair sent over from, I think, Japan. The best care looked after, probably at the end spent 6 or 7 nights in hospital, along with a couple of visits on the way through. Not a cent went out of my parents' pocket, all paid for by taxes. If I get up off my chair and walk out the door and slip and break my ankle, I go to A&E, the emergency department. I get my legs set. I get the casket on. I was going to say, and I walk out. I hop out. I use my crutches. If you walk out, then you guys are really doing it right.
No money changes hands. So yes, what you see with the NHS in the UK, I guess, without a direct comparison, but if you want to call it socialised medicine, where have we got it wrong? And America's got it so right that it rejects it outright.
Yeah, so this is the balance between sort of public and private. I actually don't have an inherent problem with trying to provide healthcare for everybody. This is actually where I would say, if you can give me some good government that is not totally bloated, that I actually think that providing healthcare, especially to the most needy, I find that to be a lofty goal, and maybe that is a good place for government to do some things. What I don't want,
pause it for 1 second. Okay, so he doesn't have an inherent problem with providing everyone with healthcare. Maybe if we had something that would provide low cost, low income people with healthcare, I'd be okay for that. Now, he may not be aware of a program called Medicaid, which I think the definition is providing low income people with health insurance. and access to health. Now, a lot of his Republican friends in states have denied a lot of people that Medicaid, but so he doesn't really realize that Medicaid exists, because he could say, like, I don't have a problem with Medicaid. But of course, Medicaid and Medicare are, if not the largest, I mean, I guess you could say the largest really sort of enterprise government function on a dollar by dollar basis, that and Social Security and the military. That's it. That's all our government really is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the military. In terms of just like, if you were to look at a pie chart, if you wanted to have dessert, those are the two areas you would look at. But Dave doesn't seem to know this, even though he's been working in doing a political talk show for however, but go ahead.
Is just some government Medicare for all thing that we know won't be a highly functional system, and will rather be a money suck, and you'll wait forever for doctors, and good doctors won't even want to be part of it, and they'll all completely privatize in some other ways because they know that the system of balances will be completely out of whack and they won't be able to make money and the rest of it.
Now,
I think doctors.
Listen, let's talk a little bit about the system of balances.
Yeah, the system of balances.
This is like the guys like, the book I found was definitely like, it was like a square book. I mean, it was sort of like a rectangle, and there were pages to it. And the guy has said, we have socialized medicine here. It's really effective. And he says, well, it's just going to be a money suck. And I don't know what that means, a money suck. And then he says that what will happen is doctors will then privatize, and depending on how you set it up, doctors wouldn't be able to privatize, but B, doctors are privatized now. I mean, I don't know what that means by privatize. Like, if you're talking about opting out of a Medicare for all, then what you're saying is that they'll take private insurance only and not Medicare for all. And the vast majority of doctors are already there. But he's saying it like it's a bad thing. And so what if you just said you can't do that? Like, there can be private insurance, but it can't cover anything that Medicare is covering. But he doesn't know this, even to criticize it, because he's never had every time he gets around with that circle jerk with Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and what's his face, Peter Thiel's quant guy, Weinstein. They never talk about any of these things. It's just the idea of it is sort of gross. Continue.
Of balances will be completely out of whack and they won't be able to make money and the rest of it. I think doctors deserve to make as much money as they can. So what I would prefer to have, and we were in many ways on the way to this, I would prefer to have individual private health insurance companies compete as much as possible for the best possible prices. But then you probably could do that within some framework where the government could help subsidize some of the costs. So let's say you got 10 health insurance companies across the nation. I would also, by the way, one of the issues we have here in America is whether you're allowed to take your health insurance over state borders. I would allow everybody to do that. If you have health insurance in Virginia and you move to New York, you should be able to take your health insurance with you. Again, I want to give people as much choice as possible, but I view the health insurance thing as—
Pause it for 1 second. Because I want to make sure that when he gets to the part that really shows the depth of his ignorance, that we can focus on that. But this idea of taking your health insurance across state lines, there's a reason why you don't have health insurance companies selling insurance across state lines. There have been many times, and first off, this is not a federal government issue. This is an issue with each state saying you need to be licensed in this state. But even if it were, there have been trials by different states where they have said, we will have reciprocity. You're Georgia, I'm North Carolina. Our insurance companies, we can let them go back and forth. And insurance companies don't do this because they have not found it worth their while to understand the risk pools in areas that they're not working in already. So they don't do that. They just don't want to. because it's not profitable for them. It's too hard for them to do that. And if you think, again, the theory that if we had a bigger risk pool, that's not what he's talking about, but that's really what it is. It's like, if we had an insurance company that could just insure everybody, it would be cheaper because the risk pool. No, he's just talking about from the consumer side. Now, you'd have to mandate that insurance companies do this because they don't find it profitable to do it, and they're not doing it. But here is where we get to the coup de grace, because what he's looking for is a system where maybe you'd have like insurance companies compete against each other, and maybe the government could subsidize the purchase of this insurance.
With you. Again, I want to give people as much choice as possible, but I view the health insurance thing as something like this. You pick probably 10, a handful of private insurance companies. They all compete for services and prices, so you're hopefully keeping the costs down. Then you get the government to come in, and if they can figure out a way to subsidize some of the products or help some of the doctors or drive down those costs a little bit. And I know this is where my libertarians friends will say, hey, once you get the government involved, you've actually just inflated everything. But I think there is some way to do something that's part private and part public. I don't think
right there. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Rubin has just discovered the Affordable Care Act, wherein the government invites insurance companies to come into an exchange or a marketplace, compete for your insurance needs, and then subsidizes those insurance policies. Dave Rubin, in 2020, has now discovered the Affordable Care Act and apparently does not realize that it exists.
He invented the Affordable Care Act, right?
He's gone back into the future.
Like, he clearly doesn't know about it.
This is what happens when you're in the realm of pure ideas. You don't have even recent history to inform you.
Nothing. And I don't blame Britain didn't, because I don't know New Zealand's health insurance system. I don't know, but he is talking about the ACA. There are three components to the ACA. One is the patient protection part, where it's like you can't have your health insurance. You don't have lifetime caps. You don't have yearly caps. You can't have your health insurance rescinded from you. Rights that you have. 26-year-olds can be on their parents' thing. The second part is expansion of Medicaid, which he also sort of endorsed earlier, the concept of it, but doesn't mention the fact that to the extent that it hasn't been expanded, it's a function of Republican lawmakers. And then the third thing is for people who do not have employer-based health insurance, you can go into a market where they invited all these health insurance companies, and then the government will subsidize those health insurance policies. That's the Affordable Care Act. Continue.
Actually just inflated everything. But I think there is some way to do something that's part private and part public. I don't think we've perfected. Well, we certainly haven't perfected.
It seems to me, for someone with, not you personally, but people who believe in a market force and don't want to involve extra levels of bureaucracy, why would you include the insurance companies at all? If you're going to include the government, just use the government. And I'll give you an example of how.
Well, because I fundamentally believe that competition actually drives costs down and makes better service.
It's not working in America at the moment, though, is it? And let me give you a tangible example again of good government. So I had New Zealand's health minister on.
Don't even cut to me. Just keep that image. Like, I just wish that he had just stopped talking after he said, it's not working in America now, is it? And just see Dave's reaction to that. But continue. Remember
last year in the podcast.
Wait, so something clear, that Dave Rubin was all for small government and a single payer health insurance program back when he was when he was a classical liberal. And he went on David Pakman's show, and Pakman asked him the most obvious question in the world. Like, what the hell does that mean? I mean, I think I had a couple exchanges with Rubin about this on Twitter. Like, the largest government you could possibly have, at least in the context of anything we were to ever talk about, would be one that does single payer health insurance. Single payer health insurance, is the definition of big government, if that's really even a thing, right? Like, because big compared to what? But if you are just sitting there and just, vaguely talking about big government, how can you support single payer health insurance? There is one way you can do it. And that is if you don't know what big government is and you don't know what single payer health insurance means. If you have no clue about those things, if you are completely ignorant, then you can say those things and say it very glibly. He's glib. All right, let's just let this run out.
Competition actually drives costs down and makes better service.
It's not working in America at the moment, though, is it? And let me give you a tangible example again of good government. So I had New Zealand's health minister on last year in the podcast when I didn't have to be in my frickin' bedroom and I could be in my studio. And I said,
old days.
And I said to him, what do we say to our American friends about how our system works? And very simply, one of the things he says is we have a group here called Pharmac that doesn't buy, 10 tablets of drug X. They buy 10 million. That drives the price down. That means, and then they subsidize us getting drug X, and we pay $5 at our pharmacy for any pills we need to have. So whether it's a $1,000 a month subscription to a very serious cancer treatment, or whether it's a $25 a month asthma puffer, costs us $5 at the pharmacy, and it's based on the government spending a huge amount of money, more than individual companies could, to drive the price down, and then they put another subsidy on top. That seems to be good government to me, and the way that we keep our prices down to the end consumer.
Yeah, that actually doesn't sound very far from what I just laid out there, except I added a free market element to it, which is you get a bunch of health insurance companies competing, which hopefully drives some costs down. And then, as I said, at the end of that, then you get the government to come in and figure out ways to subsidize things. So maybe in this case, it's to buy a tremendous amount of one drug so that the drug then is able to be gotten by the health insurance companies or by the primary care physicians at a much cheaper price. So I don't inherently have a problem.
Pause it for one second. So now he's talking about this sort of nebulous government agency that comes in on, just hangs in the back and go like, maybe in this instance, we need to buy drugs. Like there's just like a guy who's just sitting there. I'm like an entrepreneurial bureaucrat and I'm just going to go like, I'm looking at this. We should just buy 10 million of those things. Where does that money come from? Is it just like I'm going out to VCs, and then he's saying, and you could give it to the insurance companies. Well, what about that? Why are we giving them a VIG on something we just bought? It is so nonsensical. And this guy has made so much mileage out of like his floating around with this stuff. I mean, I know he's a joker and we, probably have spent more time than we should on him. But I mean, honestly, what amazes me about it is that this is not the first time we've seen him do this. And it's like, why don't you get up off of that seat as you walk off that set and say, I think his husband produces the show, or just he must have a producer or something. Hey, you know what? I think I need to bone up on this. Or why don't you just call the Koch brothers and, Liberty University or whoever you sponsor and say like, is there like, can someone teach me about this?
Just get
like,
the talking points, man. They must exist. Just read them.
Do you think he's ever done that? Do you think he's ever boned up on it?
Yeah.
That's exactly my point. It's just like how, like he must have realized in the middle of that conversation, like, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Or does he have such a blinkered self-assessment of himself that he doesn't realize like he doesn't know what he's talking about? Or is he like, I always have this level of panic that I'm in over my head, and so this was no different?
Yeah.
I think all are possibly true, but to your point, I don't think he realized he just endorsed the Liz Warren plan to produce drugs on a federal level.
Liz Warren's was to actually produce generic drugs, not just buy them. Produce
them and give them to health insurance companies.
I don't think it was then we give them to health insurance companies to mark up.